Hello everyone, welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure, all Bookmap limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk associated trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risks of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. The best way to get in touch with me is through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Doug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation and the topics of the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @Pless. Just want to stop briefly and congratulate the recent Blue Jacket winner. This is the February Blue Jacket competition. Tabiho, sorry about the pronunciation, winner of the February Blue Jacket competition. Stay tuned for the next upcoming competition. For everyone who's seen my webinars before, please bear with me. I want to go through this as quickly as possible, but I want to make sure that everyone understands my approach to trading. So here are the key tenets to my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price of many stocks and futures. That certainly applies to the large cap tech stocks, like the Magnificent Seven stocks, as well as the equity index futures, like the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index. SPY is the ETF version of that index, and the ES futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of the trades and hedge their delta exposure with ES futures. And for the Nasdaq 100, NDX is the underlying index, QQQ is the ETF version of that index, and the NQ futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in the NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of the trades and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Doug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading. The first is planning, and I use positional analysis. I look at how traders or market makers are positioned in the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding expected trading range and volatility for the day as well as their directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow in Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis and for setups. And when I talk about setups today, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options, depending on the asset, as well as the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Doug chat channel, as well as the chat and YouTube field questions and comments. Please feel free to post. I'll do my best to answer your questions. Here's my agenda for today, Wednesday, March 18th. First of all, I want to go over news items, economic data, events, and earnings for today and the rest of the week. Then I'll go through my positional analysis. Then I'll review some setups from earlier today. Then I'll get to live market. And of course, today is the FOMC announcement, statement, and press conference. So I'll stop whatever I'm doing at 2 p.m. and we'll watch the live market after the announcement and the statement comes out. All right, starting with news items. So today, PPI data came out. much hotter than expected, also at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That was VIX expiration. And then, of course, again this afternoon, 2 p.m., FOMC announcement or statement. And then after the close today, Micron earnings report. So we will take a look at Micron. I might not have time to take a look at any other stocks, but we'll definitely take a look at Micron today. All right, so let's continue on with news here. So first, PPI data came out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and it was much higher than expected, higher than the previous number, and the market did not like that at all. And market had already been moving down for quite some time before that, really tied with oil. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. Crude oil. All right, that's PPI. All right, then coming up this afternoon, this is the CME Fed Watch tool. This is showing the current target rate, 350 to 375 basis points, and there's about a 99% chance that the Fed holds rates steady, no changes, and then a slim chance, just a little over 1% of a rate increase. So the market has been hoping for rate cuts for quite some time, and it's not looking likely, especially with the weak labor data and stronger inflation data. All right, coming up at the end of the week is the options expiration. Let's take a quick look at that. Options expiration. This is the large March monthly options expiration. So this is showing market maker delta notional by expiration for the S&P 500, Nasdaq, and Russell 2000. This is the March expiration right here. Blue bars showing negative delta notional, that's put delta notional. Orange bar is showing positive delta notional, call delta notional. And you can see this expiration coming up is slightly put dominated. And so there's a lot of delta, a lot of gamma coming off on Monday, could signal a shift in the market. So this is really a pivotal week. FOMC and then options expiration on Friday. All right, let's move on to positional analysis now. Let's take a look at the S&P 500. This is the ES futures and Bookmap. And I'm showing data that began yesterday evening when the futures opened at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And there was a rally up to the SPY 675 volatility trigger, reversal at that level. Then starting later on, a sharp drop lower. And this is a pullback to around the SPX 6700 level. And now ES is traded down to its lower daily expected move. And remember yesterday, ES tested its upper daily expected move and reversed lower. And by the way, I do post those expected moves for ES, NQ, and SPX every day, the day before, in the Options Dash chat channel on Discord. All right, so remember, let's take a look at this reversal level right here. That's right around 230. Again, the SPY 675 large gamma 4 level. Let's take a look at a chart of crude oil overnight. So there's the low for crude oil overnight, right around 226. And crude oil continued to move higher up until about 11 a.m. So this time should look familiar. High for the ES, SPX, SPY, and low for crude oil, 230, then a drop lower. All right, before I take a closer look at this chart, let's step back. Let's take a look at a higher time frame. Let's go to the underlying index. That is SPX. This is a 1 year, 1 day chart in Thinkorswim. So this is showing the rally. Rally began last April 2025, ended up in consolidation this year, 2026, and now on a downtrend. All right, so let's take a look now at a shorter time frame. Let's go to a 30-day, 1 hour chart. This is a linear regression channel right here, showing the downtrend. Most recent price action, shorter time frame downtrend. And then on Monday, SPX broke up above that level and is now down, actually below the low of the day for Monday, but still up above that downtrend channel. Hello, Stephen. Welcome. Glad you're here. All right, that's a current price action. Let's take a look at the levels on this chart. Let's start with the expected moves. Dashed purple lines are showing the lower and upper weekly expected move. These are based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. Those levels remain in place for the entire week. Dashed blue lines are showing the lower and upper daily expected move, also based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from yesterday. So those levels do change every day. And again, I post those in Discord every day. All right, so SPX trading just above its lower daily expected move. And by the way, I get that information from the options chain in Thinkorswim. So Thinkorswim has been around for several decades. I have a high degree of confidence in the numbers that I get from Thinkorswim. There was some discussion about that in Discord, but I use the numbers. I don't feel the need to do any calculations for myself. All right, let's take a look at the Spotgamma levels on this chart. These are based on gamma-weighted open interest that provided to Spotgamma subscribers. They're available on a variety of trading platforms. Again, this is Thinkorswim 30-day 1 hour chart. Put wall has moved back up to 6,600 now. That's a strike large net negative gamma that can be expected to act as support. Though it did move up yesterday from 6,500 on Monday, 6,600 today, and it remains at 6,600. Next level up is the volatility trigger at 6,800. That is Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with a price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. We'll take a look. This is based on Spotgamma's older total open interest model. We'll take a look at a view of gamma in just a minute based on their newer synthetic open interest model. Next level up is the absolute gamma strike at 7,000. That's a strike where large absolute positive and negative gamma. So that's where most of the gamma weighted open interest is concentrated. And then finally, the call wall remains at 7,100. That's a strike where large net positive gamma, and that can be expected to act as resistance. And it's certainly not in play anytime soon. All right, so there were no changes today in the key levels for SPX. All right, so let's wrap up our view of SPX with a 1 minute chart. SPX 1 minute chart showing about 4 days worth of data. And this is showing regular trading hours in the dark shaded areas. Remember, SPX does not open up until 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So this is showing the gap down, resistance right around 6,700. That's a combo level just above 6,700, but still trading above its lower daily expected move, but trading well above below the volatility trigger negative gamma. All right, so that's the scenario for SPX. Let's take a quick look at SPY. SPY, there's that key resistance right at 230. As oil started to move up, resistance at the SPY, 675 volatility trigger. Trading down below the 670 absolute gamma strike. All right, that's SPY. All right, back to Bookmap. We'll zoom in mostly on regular trading hours. So again, ES has tested its lower daily expected move, trading above that level. There's the SPX 6700 level that acted as resistance and a good entry point for adding to a short or entering a short if you trade during regular trading hours. All right, note there is a difference in price between ES and SPX. And note, I am also trading the June contract. So that's the M6 contract that I'm trading for ES and NQ. So that the price difference has widened out pretty substantially. Today it's about 54 points. So ES minus SPX is 54 points. So there's SPX 6700. And I have that shown at ES 6754. And by the way, for SPY, there were a couple of shifts in levels. For SPY, the volatility trigger and absolute gamma strike both shifted higher. So that's a bullish brace for SPY. All right, that is S&P 500. Let's take a quick look at Nasdaq. All right, so this is the NQ futures of Bookmap. Again, the June contract. So let's take a look at the underlying indexes and note NQ has tested its lower daily expected move as well. So far this week, these expected moves are working really well. So yesterday, SPX reverse lower just below its upper daily expected move. ES reverse lower at its upper daily expected move, and NQ reverse lower just above its upper daily expected move. And now both ES and NQ have tested their lower daily expected moves. All right, let's take a look at the underlying index charts. We'll go to QQQ first. Zoom in on this. Overnight high right around 230, 226. And note, QQQ and SPY, QQQ and SPY, and the futures, ES and NQ, were all already dropping pretty sharply before the PPI data came out. That's right here. PPI data. No, that's 840. Somewhere, looks like right around here. That's when, let's zoom in on this. PPI data came out. So QQQ, SPY again, ES, NQ already moving down pretty low. moving down pretty sharply. Key level, 600. Put wall, absolute gamma strike. Acted as support, then resistance, resistance. And now QQQ trading down below its 600 put wall again. Key level for today. Let's take a look at NDX. The other underlying index component. So the only NDX level in play for today is this combo 2 level. And that's at 24,632. Right, back to Bookmap. All right, there's that first test of the 600 put wall. Nasdaq making a series of lower highs. All right, let's wrap up our positional analysis by taking a look at Gamma. I've got about 8 minutes before FOMC, so we're back to ES. Let's take a look at Gamma. We'll go to the trace Gamma heat map. This is showing market maker's Gamma position. Red shading indicates negative Gamma. Remember, in negative Gamma, we're looking for higher volatility. Market makers trading with price. There's some blue positive Gamma up above here, up above the 6,800 volatility trigger. So the candlesticks are showing price for SPX. And the purple line is the hero signal. This is the hero signal here, and it is trending up. So traders are taking positive delta positions before the FOMC. All right, note one key level here, 6650. That's large positive Gamma. That's market maker's position, indicating traders are selling puts at that level. Market makers are buying puts. Question, Stephen asked the difference in QQQ and NDX. All right, so NDX is similar to SPX. It is a cash-settled index. You can't buy or sell NDX. It is the underlying index, and it trades consistently. QQQ is the ETF version of that index, and the ratio for, well, QQQ is a fraction of NDX. And it is an ETF that you can trade. You can buy and sell QQQ itself, the underlying, or options. But NDX, you can only trade options, just like SPX and SPY. So let's see what options traders have been doing today. And also we're going to keep our eye out on this 6650 level, key level for today. High positive Gamma. So if price moves down, that would be the first level of potential support and potential target. All right, so let's see what options traders have been doing today. So we've looked at levels on the chart that are based on Gamma-weighted open interest. They're updated once a day. Then we've taken a look at the Gamma, trace Gamma heat map that's updated every 10 minutes. And now we're moving on to real time. This is real-time data. And this is showing more traders, options trades for SPX, SPY, ES, and XSP, the underlying index components for the S&P 500, and market maker hedging flow. So the white line is price for SPX. The purple line is the hero signal. A rising hero signal indicates traders are taking positive delta options positions. They're buying calls and or selling puts. and a falling hero signal. Can't really find much of a falling hero signal here. Indicates traders are taking negative delta options positions. They're buying puts and or selling calls. So this is quite interesting. Traders taking positive delta positions. This is large, 7.3 billion delta notional. So let's see what they're doing. Separate out puts and calls. So today, traders are buying calls, that's shown by the rising orange line, and selling puts as well in the indexes. Let's take a look at the equities. So this is showing traders are taking negative delta options positions, but the delta notional is much smaller. So they're selling calls and buying puts in equities and doing just the opposite in the indexes. And again, a much larger numbers. It looks like there's about a tenfold difference. All right, back to Bookmap, back to ES. All right, I've got about 3 minutes. And give me just a moment here. I'm going to watch a live stream of CNBC so I can see any information that comes up about the announcement and the statement. All right, let's zoom in. All right, so it looks like traders are starting to pull some of their orders. So we can see right here the heat map, the Bookmap, starts to become pretty thin. So these are buy and sell orders, limit orders in the order book. Traders are pulling those ahead of the FOMC. All right, so again, remember, we are not expecting any change. So traders will be parsing the statement, algos parsing the statement. And then we'll see how markets react. So let's go back. I want to take a quick look at Hero. I'm going to shift to total, and I'm going to open up another view of Hero. So over here, I'm going to have the index signal for S&P 500. Zoom in on this, and then I'll have equities over here. So open up full screen, equities. All right, so we don't have to continually zoom from one to another. All right, I've got about 1 minute. All right, so we prepared. We've taken a look at the levels in play, the trace gamma heat map, so we know that S&P 500 is negative gamma. We know the expectation is for no change. So really, what matters now is what comes out in the statement. See a lot of green volume dots here, rising cumulative volume delta. We also know the S&P 500 index hero signal is rising pretty sharply, has been most of the day, with quite a large delta notional. All right, I've got about 10 seconds. And by the way, for those of you on YouTube, there is a bit of delay, maybe 20 seconds or so. All right, here it is, 2 p.m. Initial reaction bullish. All right, what I'm watching on CNBC is going to be delayed a bit. All right, Fed holds rate steady, no change. Algos parse the statement. Bullish reaction. Let's see what options traders are doing. Index hero signal moving higher, continues to move higher. Same for equities. Back to Bookmap. ES up to point of control, that purple line. Fed projects one more rate cut this year, one more next year. So compared with the beginning of the year, that is not, that's probably lower than initial expectations. Now some aggressive sellers started to come in, magenta volume dots. Seven officials forecast holding steady. 12C, one cut or more. So divided Fed. Not sure how much of a difference one cut is going to make. All right, let's see what options traders are doing. All right, the index signal turning a little bit lower. Let's check equities. Flattening out just a little bit. So far, not much of a movement. Not much movement. Back to Bookmap. Anyone have any questions, comments? Let's take a look at Nasdaq. Looks like there were some large traders buying with iceberg orders they used to hide their size, shown by the rising light blue line. Looks like they may have started right before 2 p.m. Nasdaq moving higher above the QQQ 600 absolute gamma strike put wall. Back to ES. Or it looks like Nasdaq finding resistance at the QQQ 601 level. All right, so this is pretty minor movement after FOMC, after the announcement and statement. So it looks like both were pretty much as expected. Hold rate steady, projection for one more rate cut. All right, I'm going to take a look at some stocks today, and I had a few notable stocks that I wanted to take a look at based on movement this morning. So let's start with Micron. Micron reports earnings after the close. So choppy but bullish day for Micron, at least after the open. So data starting at 4 a.m. Micron did trade down to around the 460 level. Looks like I need to update my lines. But bullish after the cash open. Let's see how options traders are positioning. I'm going to shift back to puts and calls. Actually, let me open up one more. One more tab here. Shift to puts and calls, go to Micron. So today, traders have been buying calls on Micron, shown by the rising orange line. When traders buy calls, market makers sell calls. They have to buy stock to hedge their delta exposure. So traders started buying calls. Looks like they were chasing price there. Buying calls again. And then as call buyers take the foot off the gas, Micron consolidates. So that peak was right around 11, somewhere between 11.05 and 11.10. But net for the day, traders are sending up bullishly and Micron buying calls. Let's check next expiry. So this is showing the next expiration with puts and calls. And calls, green line, that's expirations, that's options that expire on Friday. So it's showing most of the call buying is options that expire on Friday. Almost all of it. And actually a little bit more. The green line is ahead of the orange line. So it means a little bit of that is longer term. Most of it, again, is options that expire on Friday. And the puts, it's almost identical. All right, so that's Micron. Back to Bookmap. Traders getting ready for earnings. All right, next stock, AMD. Bullish day in AMD. Let's see what options traders are doing. Bullish opening drive. Traders buy calls, sell puts, shown by the rising orange and blue lines respectively. Peak pattern right around 10:15. AMD consolidates, starts to move higher, then the call buyers and put sellers join in the move higher. So there's that initial move higher, bullish opening drive, consolidation. It looks like aggressive buyers came in right around 1:30. And then the call buyers and put sellers joined a few minutes later. You can see the rising cumulative volume delta, all the green volume dots. Strong bullish day in AMD and a reversal just before the open. All right, let's go back, check the indexes. Then we'll check a couple more stocks. Yes. grinding slightly lower. Nasdaq, same. Back down now below the 600 absolute gamma strike put wall. Now large traders are fading this move, shown by the falling light blue line. They're selling NQ with iceberg orders. Also, the falling yellow line indicates sell stop orders are fueling that move lower. Back to ES. All right, let's take a look at a couple of other stocks. First of all, Nebius was on the move again today to the upside. Let's see what options traders are doing. Traders are buying calls. They continue to buy calls. $120 call wall key gamma strike. Resistance, resistance, resistance. Now support. As traders continue to buy calls, market makers sell the calls. They have to buy stock to hedge their delta exposure since they want to remain delta neutral. Let's go take a look at Bookmap. Nebius on the move. Traders also buying shares, shown by the green volume dots. Rising cumulative volume delta. All right, let's check indexes again. Yes, definitely nothing of note here. NQ may be finding support at this combo level just below the 600 absolute gamma strike put wall. All right, back to Hero. All right, there's the index signal. Now starting to turn up again. Just really choppy. Equity signal. Another stock that I noted that was on the move, Western Digital. Nice long setup reversal just above the 300 key gamma strike. As traders stop buying puts and selling calls, started selling puts and buying calls. They continue to buy calls, pretty steady progression throughout the day. Yeah, I don't have Western Digital and Bookmap, but bullish day and memory and storage stocks today. I made a note about Apple earlier. Let's see what's going on with Apple. All right, Apple bearish day. Reversal at the 255 hedge wall. Though the flow alert that came in just before that shift in hedging flow. So initially for the first 10-15 minutes, there was a brief bullish opening drive, traders buying calls, selling puts. That reversed lower right around 9:45. Traders started buying puts, took the foot off the gas, call sellers came in. Apple moved down lower, did not quite reach the 250 put wall. Let's go take a look at Bookmap. Go to Apple. Oh, sharp drop. Let's go back to the Nasdaq. All right, Nasdaq dropping shortly. Not sure what that was. Let's check ES. Sharp drop as well. Let me check news, see if I can see anything that came in just a minute or two ago. All right, maybe this is Qatar Interior Ministry, Civil Defense dealing with the fire and the... So that must be it. Back to Iran now. All right, so it looks like this sharp move down did not have anything to do with the with the Fed. Let's check our oil chart. All right, oil was falling, but reversed sharply up a couple minutes ago. So that must be it. All right, questions, comments? Anyone have any stocks they want to take a look at? All right, we were looking at Apple and Hero. There's that reversal just below the 255 hedge wall. Sellers starting to come in. Break down below the 254 level. Primary target 250 put wall. You can see all the limit buy orders acting as a magnet for price. And Stephen asked, do you think Apple can make lower lows? Yeah, let's see. So let's take a look at Hero. Well, first of all, I think 250 is the next big target. So let's go to Apple Hero. All right, so if Apple makes it down to 250, I'm looking for traders to sell calls and potentially start to buy puts. So that would be bearish momentum. And 250 is the likely target. And Stephen asked, is there any liquidity below 250? Yeah, we can see. Liquidity at every round number level, with more at the zeros and the fives. So 245 would be the next level down below. I certainly don't expect that today in Apple. But 250 is definitely the target for today. So some sellers come in or put buyers call sellers, then Apple would move down to 250. And maybe if this move continues down over tomorrow or the rest of the week, then 245, maybe even 240. All right, Nasdaq. All right, so it looks like it has recovered a little bit, but the overall trend since this initial move higher is, overall trend is down after 2 p.m. Right back to ES. Overall trend also down. Looks like ES did not quite tag its lower day than expected move. Let's see where NQ is in respect to its lower day than expected move. So still above it. And Steven says, still kind of new with option stuff. Quite interesting, but need to do a lot of learning. Yeah, it's just going to take time. So you've got to, there's only one way to learn it, and that's to apply yourself and learn it. So you don't have, definitely do not have to be an expert options trader, but you do need to understand the basics. All right, Nasdaq trading down well below the 600 put wall. ES hovering just above its lower day than expected move. All right, questions, comments? Any other stocks you want to take a look at? Let's take a look at crude oil again. All right, crude oil finding resistance at VWAP. This is a light blue line, resistance at VWAP. Let's check VIX. VIX is just slightly higher on the day. Moved up overnight. Again with a drop in the S&P 500. Choppy. Right back to crude oil. And Stephen is asking about tokenized stocks. Yeah, I'm not familiar with tokenized stocks. That's just not something that I've looked into. So sorry about that. Yeah, I just can't offer any kind of opinion about that. All right, ES down to its lower day than expected move. Let's check SPX. Underlying index. Zoom in. All right, and let me zoom out so we can. We'll need to see this much so we have the lower lines in view. All right, so SPX down toward lows of the day, but has not broken down before the previous low today. All right, once again, ES finding support at the lower day than expected move. Note the limit buy orders just down below this level at 67.15. That's shown by the heat map and Bookmap. Wacko wacko, welcome, glad you're here. Welcome, new to Bookmap. How do you get the letters and numbers on the lines you draw? All right, so I assume you're referring to this right here. All right, so what I do is I use an add-on at Bookmap called Price Lines. This is available in the Bookmap marketplace. It is a paid add-on. Oops, wrong one. Price Lines. So I have this Price Lines pointing to a CSV file that I update every day. So this Price Lines reads the data from the CSV file and then draws the lines and the color and the line style that I want and places the labels on the chart where I want to see them. So label position on the left. I adjust the line opacity, label opacity. Then here's my spreadsheet. So for example, and I get these levels mostly from Spotgamma. So here's my ES levels. I update this spreadsheet every day. Get the Spotgamma levels, show those on the chart, and this is how I do it. So this is a key part of my morning preparation. And again, this is an add-on that's available in Bookmap Marketplace called Price Lines. Now the lower and upper daily expected moves, I do get those from an options chain of Thinkorswim. So with the Price Lines add-on, I can show Spotgamma levels, round number levels, ES levels. So for the SP 500, I'm showing key SPY levels, SPX levels, and ES levels, like this lower and upper daily expected moves. So let's take a look. Well, we're on SPX, so we'll just go to the trade tab here. All right, so to get the expected move for tomorrow, I'm going to wait till the close. So SPX, the price closes at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and then the options close at 4:15. So anytime after 4:15, I'm going to look at this. This is the options expiration for tomorrow. And I'm going to come over here, take a look at this number. So it will change during the day. And I'll get it after the close so it remains stable. Right now it's showing a move of plus or minus 73.08 points. Now that will change, so I'll wait till the close. I'll get that number. Usually I wait until after 5 p.m. So I get the ES, NQ, and SPX expected moves all at the same time from this information in the Spotgamma dashboard. So Kareem, who was asking about this before, this is how I get that information. I have a high degree of confidence. Thinkorswim has been around for at least a couple of decades. And just by experience, I have a high degree of confidence in this level. Doesn't always act as support and resistance, but the odds are 68% of the time that price is going to remain within the lower and upper expected move bounds for the day. And Meow Flowing, welcome, glad you're here. Ask, can you get NDX as well? Yeah, sure. So there's a limit to my time. So NDX I do not get, but that's certainly available. So let's go back to Thinkorswim. So yeah, if you're interested in NDX, just go to an options chain and you can get it there. So right now for tomorrow, this is showing change of plus or minus right around 285 points for NDX. So yeah, you can get this for any instrument with options. All right, let's check Nasdaq. All right, everyone, looks like Nasdaq holding right at the QQQ 599 level, above its lower day they expected to move. All right, the press conference is beginning, so I'm going to wrap it up. Everyone, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for your questions and comments, and good luck trading this afternoon if you're trading the press conference. All right, everyone, thanks again. Hope to see you on Friday. We'll talk about options expiration on Friday. Everyone, again, have a great afternoon. Good luck trading, and I will see you on Friday. Bye.